Hello. In this video, we'll look into an introduction to Pandas DataFrames, which is probably a thing that you'll have to start with if you are considering data analytics using Python. So very quickly, if you think about Python and if you think about analyzing data, you probably will hear about stuff like Matplotlib and Numpy and Pandas. I'm excluding for now the whole machine learning thing because that's the more complicated bit. We'll start off easier with just data analytics. So Pandas is basically built upon Numpy and Matplotlib. Numpy provides arrays, two-dimensional, multi-dimensional arrays that you can use to transform data, and Matplotlib deals with visualization. Today I'm going to show you very quickly how we can check our data using Pandas and using Dataframes in Pandas, which are objects that are primarily used to deal with data. We'll start off by importing Pandas as a library. Okay. And just execute the cell. Now let's go to another cell, and here we will actually import our data set. So I'll go off with df equals pd dot read csv, open parentheses, name of our file, superstore orders, and now the important bit. Normally the CSV files are separated by comma, so basically the columns are separated by comma. My file unfortunately is separated by semicolon, which is a good opportunity to show you that you can change the delimiter, which you'll do like this. So separator equals semicolon. And what's happening here? We are creating a data frame that we will call df, and we will read into this data frame data from the superstore orders.csv. We are saying to Python, look, the separator is semicolon, so check your columns by semicolon sign, and we are using the pd as from pandas read underscore csv. Okay, we have that, and now it will be good to actually check whether this worked okay, because we don't see any result. The most common way to see a bit of your data frame, a bit of your table that you have imported, is to use a method called head. So we go with df.head with the parentheses, and now you can see the table, at least the first 5 rows of it, and columns I have here. Note a couple interesting things. For example, 1, you see only 5 rows, the table has more. You use the head just to see how the data looks like, but not necessarily to see the whole column. The next thing, you don't see all the columns. Here I have 21, if I'm not mistaken. Here you can see the 3 dots, suggesting that there are more columns here in the middle, and you have the values. But if you want to learn more about this data frame, about the data that you have, you'll use different methods, because the head is just for very simple quick overview. So what is next? What method should you use next? The next method you can use is called info, and this gives you the column names, their types, and information if we have any nulls there, meaning any missing values. So here you can see that we have 9,994 values, all of them not null, so all of the values are filled. And we can see data types as integer 64 and object. What is interesting is that we can see here that profit and discount and sales actually is marked as an object, whereas here you can see that it should be a number, it should be a floating point number. The reason for that is that we have a comma here instead of a dot, which prevented Python from reading it as a floating point. We can deal with that later by cleaning up the data that we have. This is a very common problem. The same goes for the date. This is also not, let's say, a optimal way at formatting date. But for today, we're just gonna look at really quickly having an overview of how we can check data in a data frame. So we've used already head, we've used info, and what else can we use? If I go for df scribe and run this, you can see that this method, scribe, gives the summary of the numeric columns. You can see it took row ID, the postal column, and the quantity, for which none of them are really useful. The reason is, again, profit and discount and sales are not categorized as numbers, they are categorized as objects. So simplifying a little bit, it's simply a text. Okay, so we already have some information about our data. What else can we learn? You could sort of figure out this already, but another way of telling how big is your data frame is to use the shape. And the shape is actually not a method, it's an attribute. So I'm going to go with df.shape, but there's no need for parentheses. Again, it's an attribute. I've run it and you can see a tuple 999421, which basically means 9,994 records and 21 columns. If you want to learn more about the labels of, for example, those columns or those rows, or even the values themselves, you'll use 3 other attributes. So we will go for df.columns, and that will give you the columns and basically their names. You can go for df.index, which will give you the information about the records themselves. And then finally, you can use the df.values to learn what exactly values you have there. This will result in a 2-dimensional array of all the values that you have in the whole data frame. Obviously only for, let's say, the reading in the Jupyter notebooks, you can see those 3 dots here, but the output is the array of all the values in the data frame. And as you can see, it's pretty simple to learn stuff about your data frame. It's pretty simple to read it if you have a simple CSV file. Do remember about the semicolon. If you wouldn't, that would result in an error. Actually, I believe I can show you that. So let's say I don't put the separator here. I'll just run it like this. And you can see we have a parser error. That's because it actually expected that it would be delimited by a comma. Isn't so? We have an error. So again, if we specify the separator, it will run correctly. And that's it for today. Have a look at it. Install Anaconda if you haven't already. Try out Jupyter Notebooks and try reading some simple CSV file. Check what kind of columns you have. Check what kind of data types those columns have. Check the summary statistic, their mean, standard deviation, maximum value. Check all of that, because next we'll move into some more advanced stuff. And do remember that Python is only one tool for data analytics. I would say that if you are starting, you need to know SQL beforehand. It's probably the most common order. So do check this inner join tutorial in SQL, because without joins, you don't really know data analytics. Thank you so much. Consider like and subscribing. See you next time.